Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Morgan Adams. And she's got extensive experience in sleep. She's the woman's sleep coach, and her mission is to help women live healthier lives by harnessing the power of sleep. Really interesting, this area of sleep science, ever since Ariana Huffington came out with her book. And I'm really happy to have her on the show. So, Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, we were talking backstage, and I'd love to hear your story, what you do, how you got to do what you do, and how the audience can benefit from your expertise today.
Sure. I got really interested in sleep in 2020. So, the first couple months of the pandemic, my sleep was in the gutter. And just with all the uncertainty of what was going on, what's the state of the world, we were all wondering. And what I found is that my sleep was starting to suffer quite a bit. And 15 years before that, I'd had pretty severe insomnia. I was dependent on Ambien for a while, and I was able to get myself out of that hole. But when this sleep speed bump, if you will, happened in 2020, I got really concerned about going back into full blown insomnia. So, what I started to do was research online about sleep. I bought an Aura ring to track my sleep. And in pretty short order, I was able to get my sleep back on track. And during this period of time, I would be going on Facebook and just organically sharing what I was learning, how I was improving my sleep. And just because I was excited, there was like this kind of, wow, things can be fixed here. And what I found out was that a lot of people in my circle were having trouble sleeping around the same time too. So a little bit later on in 2020, I had a revelation that I needed to become a holistic sleep coach for women. 2 years before this all happened, I had a breast cancer experience, which really changed the trajectory of my life's work, my mission. I knew I wanted to help women with their health, but I wasn't quite sure how that would play out. And when I discovered this love for sleep and sleep science, everything melded together for me. And so in 2020, I took a health certification, coaching. I did sleep certifications. I really immersed myself for a whole year, just getting caught up on the sleep science and just learning about sleep. And then in 2021, I launched my sleep coaching practice. And I mainly see women. I do see a few men, but it's mainly women because I market more towards women. And the women I serve mainly have insomnia. There are some people in the mix who want to optimize their sleep, but it's primarily people who have insomnia.
Yeah, really interesting. And so this fantastic intro opens up the door to so many points of discussion. One thing, just out of my curiosity, is the difference in sleep dysfunction between men or women. Because, for example, like my wife, I know she has trouble sleeping. And like for me, I can just, when my head hits the pillow, I can sleep very quickly. But so what is keeping people up at night? Is it hormonal? Is it anxiety? Is it diet? Elaborate on the
Yeah,
causes. of this.
a great question. So, what we
Yeah.
do know is women are about twice as likely to experience insomnia as men. And there's three main reasons why women tend to struggle more with their sleep than men. Number one, you hit on it, hormones. From the time we're teenagers up until menopause, our hormones can be in flux. The second reason is because women tend to be more prone to mood disorders like anxiety and depression, and those can leave you vulnerable to insomnia. And then the third reason is more of a socio-cultural reason, and it's because women are playing so many roles. For example, a lot of the women I work with are in midlife, and at that stage of life, they're often raising children. They're often dealing with aging parents. So they have the responsibilities of a younger generation and an older generation. And on top of that, they are often at the top of their career game. So they've got all these competing demand. I've heard them called the sandwich generation, which really aptly describes it. So there's a conglomeration of different reasons why women are struggling with their sleep, but those are the main three for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The other, what I'm really interesting is this idea of sleep hygiene. And I'm always curious about new terms. So what is sleep hygiene? Why do they call it hygiene? And I know some people have a sleep routine, which is really interesting. Talk about that.
Yeah. So the term sleep hygiene, I believe, is a play on the word oral hygiene, the same concept. So if you are practicing good oral hygiene, you may prevent cavities. If you're practicing good sleep hygiene, you potentially could be preventing insomnia. I don't like the term sleep hygiene personally
Yeah.
because I find that it's if you're not doing it right, you're dirty or something like that. But I will use the word sleep hygiene because people know what it means, but I like the term sleep health better. But essentially, what sleep hygiene is basic practices that we can employ to protect our sleep, to safeguard it. And it ranges from not eating too close to bed to watching your alcohol and caffeine before bed, waking up around the same time every morning, having a bedroom that is conducive to sleep. And we can riff on some of these more in depth, but that's generally what sleep hygiene is. And it's pretty important. But one interesting little caveat here to sleep hygiene is that once people come to me and they have insomnia, they've actually already done all the sleep hygiene and they find that it doesn't work. Quite often, when somebody with insomnia goes to their family doctor, they may be given a list of sleep hygiene tips. But unfortunately, the person with insomnia has already used the tips because they've been online and they know. So it's a great thing to get into the habit of, but it doesn't fully guarantee that it'll prevent you from having a sleep issue.
Yeah. The other question I have for you is how does this idea, because I know they call it basically some people have to sleep earlier than others. Some people function optimally at different times. And what are the best assessments for figuring out your sleep patterns and adjusting accordingly?
Yeah, I think you're referring to chronotype. And that's basically if are you an early bird or a night owl? And we know that like maybe 20% of people are early birds, 20% are night owls, and then the rest of us are in between. And there's different ways. I think most people intuitively know, but there is an actual test that you can take online that I actually have my clients take. If anyone's interested in looking at it further, it's a tongue twister. It's called the Morningness Eveningness Questionnaire, or MEQ for short. You can just Google that and it'll take you through a series of questions. And at the end, it'll score you on are you moderate evening, more extreme evening, extreme early. So that way you can find where you land in the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because the summer I was traveling last month, I was in Europe. And what's interesting is like they're 7 hours ahead. So it's basically you could wake up early and get a whole day's work and then wait. And then you could do 2 days of work in one. So it's really extreme productivity. Yeah. You mentioned sleeping rituals. And so what are some rituals that people can do to prepare for sleep as well as get optimal sleep? I heard people, for example, a lot of people they'll make everything dark and turn everything down like super cold and just get that 8 hours. What are your recommendations?
Yeah. So I think when you take a look at your bedroom, that's a good place to start. So I like to talk to my clients about having their bedroom like a cave. So what is a cave? It's cold, dark, and quiet. So the kind of optimal temperature range looks to be about 65 to 68. I know that sounds a little bit cool, but essentially what you want to do is you want to have it a couple degrees cooler than the rest of your house because we need actually to have our core body temperature lowered by a couple degrees to initiate sleep and to stay asleep. The coolness is important. The light is important. So quite often people will sleep with a light on or they'll have blinds that are very transparent and too much light can come through. And we really do need to sleep in total darkness. In fact, the room should be so dark that if you put your hand out in front of you, you shouldn't be able to see your hand. So that's pretty dark. So how do we achieve that degree of darkness? A couple things. We could invest in blackout shades or blackout curtains. There are actually a ton on the market now that are quite attainable financially for most people. And then there's a good old fashioned eye mask, which is great. Or you can double up and really ensure that you're sleeping in darkness. And the eye masks are wonderful to keep with you in your suitcase for travel, because when you're in a hotel or an Airbnb, you just never know how the light situation is going to pan out. And then with the quiet, we ideally want to sleep in a quiet room. However, there are so many extraneous noises that can happen, fire alarms, ambulances. You just never know what kind of noises are going to be outside your home. And then inside your home, random house noises, creaks, pets, kids, all those things. So it's hard to actually attain a very quiet environment. So what often people will do is they'll get a white noise machine. I sleep with one every night. I love it. It's very soothing, but that's a really personal thing. Some people don't like white noise at all. Some people might prefer nature noises, or they might like to have music on in the background. So that's the bedroom situation. Other rituals are things that are just relaxing for you individually. So some examples, I'll just run through a few that my clients like to do. Warm bath can help cool your core body temperature, actually, to help initiate sleep. Journaling, meditation, gentle yoga, breath work, listening to podcasts. TV is an interesting one. I actually personally like TV before I go to bed. And people are like, wait, you're a sleep coach. Isn't that bad sleep hygiene? And you can actually watch this alternative viewpoint from some sleep people, but I do believe that you can watch TV before bed and not have it disturb your sleep, but you have to be mindful. So number one, you want to make sure that you're protecting your eyes from the blue light from the screen. So investing in a good pair of blue blocking glasses is always a safe bet. And then really the content that you're watching is so important. So if you're watching news, media, there's disturbing news going on, if you're watching crime dramas, horror movies, things that are just a little bit too activating for your brain, that can actually impair your sleep. The content that you should be looking for is lighthearted. Maybe watch a sitcom that you've watched before. You don't want any surprises. Food shows, home shows are always a good bet. And there are just so many things. So what I really like to do with my clients is really have them pick out what they find personally relaxing, because it varies from person to person. Like I'd mentioned baths. A lot of people find them relaxing. I find them not relaxing at all. And so it's just a really personal preference as to what you want to do for your bedtime wind down routine. But you really should prioritize some type of wind down routine for yourself. And that could really start ideally an hour before bed would be ideal for most people. But if you can do 30 minutes, you're doing yourself a huge service, because there's an analogy by Dr. Matthew Walker, a very well-known sleep scientist. He talks about how sleep is something like you've got to descend gradually like a plane. You don't just crash land. You've got to wind yourself down a little bit and prepare. Quite often, what I'll see with people who are really working very hard at their career, they will be working late into the night and they'll shut off their computer from working and they'll go to bed. They haven't allowed themselves any wind down time at all. They haven't allowed their brains to shut down. So it can be really difficult when you are go and then you stop abruptly and try to sleep. It can often backfire on you.
Yeah, I love that. Now, what's interesting, because I read Ariana Huffington's Sleep Revolution, and she was talking about keeping her cell phone in another room, and then she described it as tucking it away. She had a cover. For a lot of people listening to this podcast, entrepreneurs, they're flying across different time zones, and how do you manage the jet lag? Because sometimes like you're 7 hours and you'll wake up at 2 a.m. or even now you like wake up early, but then you've done so much and then it's 5:30 or whatever and the sun's still out. And how do you have 3 hours, 4 hours till bed? And you can't sleep. What do you do?
Yeah. There is an amazing app that I refer all my clients who are in this situation to. It's called Time Shifter. It's a free app. Your first trip is free, and then you pay a little bit of money for subsequent trips. But what's really unique about this app is that the algorithm that they use is being used to prepare astronauts at NASA for their voyages. So when I say they've got it down to a science, I'm not kidding. So what you do with this app is you enter in your flight number and it will populate where your destination is. And it will give you a protocol to follow in the days leading up before your trip. And then a protocol once you're there and then upon your return. So it's a foolproof, well, I call it foolproof. I'm sure there's some ways you can mess it up, but it's a very seamless way to get that protocol in. And what it often involves would be changing your light exposure at different times. It could involve potentially taking melatonin in preparation. So I would highly recommend, I have no affiliation, by the way. They don't pay me to say this, but I would really highly recommend looking into time shifter if you're traveling like more than 3 time zones away, because that's when the jet lag really starts to get a little bit more of a nuisance.
Yeah, I've read that for every hour time difference, it takes about a day to just get adjusted. And yeah, what's in like finding flights that kind of correspond with your like, is like when I'm tired, but I can stay up if I'm still up. So it's coordinating. But the other thing is, because you mentioned these apps and you mentioned the Aura Ring earlier on, what are some new technology tools to help people sleep better, optimize their sleep, diet, nutrition? When we have around 5 minutes remaining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of new technology happening in the sleep world. A lot of companies reach out to me to send me their products. Some of them are good, some of them not so great. But I really do think a great place to start with technology and sleep is a sleep tracker. I mentioned the Aura Ring. There are many others out there. There's the Whoop, there's the Fitbit. What these are good for is helping people understand how their behaviors are influencing their sleep. For example, you have a dashboard and you can see if you've got how your sleep quantity is, how your REM sleep, how your deep sleep looks, how your recovery looks. And quite often people will start to notice, this is an example, a very popular one, I might add. If I'm having alcohol, if I'm having 2 glasses of wine at 8 o'clock, my sleep isn't so great. So it gives you this kick in the butt, if you will, to perhaps experiment with maybe having less alcohol or maybe having your alcohol earlier in the evening. So sleep trackers can be a very useful tool. Where they are a little bit murky is when you have insomnia, which is most of my clients. So what happens with insomnia is quite often if someone with insomnia is attached to a sleep tracker, they will get almost hyperfixated on the data, and that actually creates more anxiety about their sleep and can worsen their sleep. So you have to really know yourself. And what I see sometimes is some people kind of dance in the middle. Some people I get a little too attached, but it's not that bad. What I recommend for that is maybe looking at your data once a week, like every Saturday morning, take a look at the week back to look at trends versus looking at it every morning. So that's a good practice. As far as nutrition, some general guidelines I would recommend for people would be to really focus in on keeping your blood sugar balanced throughout the day. Because when your blood sugar is balanced throughout the day, that tends to trend over into the evening. And we want to maintain that blood sugar balance in the evening because quite often what I'm finding with my clients is the 2 or 3 a.m. wake ups are caused by blood sugar crash. And that creates a cortisol and norepinephrine surge. And so people wake up. So really having a high protein breakfast, having a healthy fat at every meal, a good protein at every meal, and not having like sweets and carbs on their own. So that's a good recommendation for diet. Also, interestingly, they have found that the Mediterranean diet is correlated with higher quality sleep. So they've done multiple studies just correlating it. So the theory is that because the Mediterranean diet has a lot of vegetables, it's high fiber, low in saturated fat, we tend to see diets that follow those parameters to be more conducive to sleep. And then with the timing of our meals, we really want to make sure that we're giving our bodies enough time to digest our food before we get into bed. So I recommend that people try to finish their last bite of dinner for about 3 hours before they go to bed. And even earlier if they can. I know that can be difficult with having families and work engagements, but if you can just give yourself that buffer, you will definitely notice a change in your sleep versus eating a big meal right before bed. What else can we cover? I know we don't have too much time, but what other burning questions?
Oh, well, yeah, it's interesting because I have a decibel defense and then also the night shades. And that's really helpful in midday, just naps, just to recharge your energy a little bit. And then the other question for you is for people interested in helping client with sleep, what sort of qualifications? Because I know physicians, they also help with sleep, but like where would they go to get started to get these certifications to help others sleep better?
Yeah. Where would they go? There is, there are a few out there. Online, one is called Online Sleep Coach. I'm trying to think of ones that would might actually they're the one that's the best one. This isn't a certification, but it's a community that I'm involved in, and it's actually for physicians. It's called Intrabalance. So if you look at Intrabalance, the sleep psychiatrist who runs this group, her name is Nishi Bhopal. And she created this community because she had so many primary care physicians reaching out to ask for help. So in this community, they offer many trainings on how to assess for sleep, how to titrate off sleep medications. It's a really valuable community. And so she lets in sleep doctors, sleep coaches, people like that. So I think that's probably the best place to like really learn. You won't get a certification, but that's totally cool because you'll learn a ton from her content.
Yeah, wonderful convo. And if people wanted to find out more about you and reach out to you, get help, learn more about you, how would they do that?
Sure. So on my website, which is morganadams.com, you can find a free mini course on building better evening and morning routines for setting yourself up for good sleep. I also offer a free clarity call, which is a consultation for people to chat with me about their sleep struggle and to assess if sleep coaching might be the most logical next step. I'm also on Instagram. I'm very active there. My handle is morganadams.wellness. Shoot me a DM. I'll reply to you. I love talking about sleep. Don't be a stranger if you find me. I enjoy chatting with people about sleep, truly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. And one of those things where as you progress, there's things that we never knew about, like sleep science and sleep medicine. And for all the audience, be sure to give Morgan socials a like and follow, reach out to her. These will be in the show notes. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.